Hey everyone, Steve Adubato. This is Lessons in Leadership. We kick off this series. This new series is called the mini-series of Lessons in Leadership, Discovery and Innovation in New Jersey. So there'll be a whole range of programs with people in this state who are involved in discovery and innovation. And our partner in that is Chris Palladino, president of New Brunswick Development Corporation, DevCo, and HELIX behind him. Chris, this series, Discovery and Innovation in New Jersey, there'll be Tim Sullivan from the Economic Development Authority, the head of the RWJ Barnabas Health, the head of Hackensack Meridian Health, Princeton University, Rutgers University, all your partners. Why is this series, Lessons in Leadership, Discovery and Innovation in New Jersey, so important, Chris?
Look, it's important because the HELIX is important. The HELIX is important to New Jersey. We're building an ecosystem that is going to foster scientific collaboration, discovery, and commercialization, and hopefully reignite the innovative spirit of New Jersey, which has been part of our history.
Yeah, tee it up, Mary.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to be talking a lot about discovery. What does that look like in 20 seconds or less? What does discovery and innovation look like in New Jersey?
New Jersey has, a long history of this. Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, Sarnoff, Waxman. They created industries, they created jobs. And what we are trying to do is create an environment where the next telephone, the next laser, the next pharmaceutical or therapy is going to be founded and create an entire new industry in New Jersey. And this is creating an environment where creative collisions can happen. What's fortunate is that people have finally realized once again that they need to collaborate. They need each other. They can do more in partnerships than they can alone. And this is a place that can do that.
And so you may wonder, discovery and innovation in New Jersey, and I appreciate that Chris Palladino mentioned Edison. On our sister series, Remember Them, that I do with Jackie Chikarico, we did a whole special on innovation in New Jersey that started with people like Edison. And so to Chris's point, this whole series, Discovery and Innovation in New Jersey, we'll talk to people, we'll feature people who are making a difference, who are innovating, who are discovering. New Jersey has that history, as Chris said, but why not in New Jersey again? And that's what's happening at the HELIX. Chris, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mary.
You got it. Lessons in Leadership, Discovery and Innovation in New Jersey. Here it is. We're now joined by our longtime friend, Tim Sullivan, the Chief Executive Officer of New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Their website will be up. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Listen, we just saw Chris Palladino talk about the HELIX, tee it up, and explain why it's so significant. Talk about the role of the Economic Development Authority with the HELIX and why it's so impactful for so many citizens in the state.
Well, the HELIX is one of maybe the most significant examples of Governor Murphy's commitment to the innovation economy and recapturing New Jersey's leadership position in innovation and entrepreneurship. When you have a project like this that brings together higher ed, big companies, big healthcare providers, researchers, and venture capitalists, something special is going to come from it, and we're really excited about that. The EDA is thrilled to have played a pretty big role in this project, one through our Strategic Innovation Center investment, where we made a $10 million equity investment in the project, as well as providing a significant amount of tax credits to the project through our Aspire program.
And, we had conversations with George Helmy earlier today from RWJ Barnabas Health and Jose Lozano, your longtime friend and colleague who's over at Hackensack Meridian Health. And both of them talked about collaboration, partnership with folks who can sometimes be competitors, but in other cases need to come together to do something bigger. Is that a fair way to say it, Tim?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. To have both RWJ and Hackensack here, I think speaks to the importance to the state of this project, to have two of the best, health systems in America, not to mention New Jersey, coming together and partnering with Rutgers, partnering with Princeton, partnering with the EDA, and therefore the state, is going to bring together so much of the research capability, the clinical capability that we think we really need to make a difference in life sciences and drive both cures for patients that are, the patients of RWJ and Hackensack, but also to drive new companies that'll be created around the discoveries that happen right there in New Brunswick.
And big economic development implications, right?
Huge. I mean, the impact just on the sort of the vibrancy of New Brunswick, which is doing as well as any state, excuse me, as any city, not just New Jersey, but across the country of its size. But to fill in a big hole in the ground that's been there for a long period of time, right across from the train station is incredibly important. But the effect this is going to have in terms of driving a whole new generation of new startups, new research and development driven companies, and then the chance to collaborate with someone like Bell Labs, and Nokia Bell Labs is going to be coming and being in the building next door. I think if you a few years ago closed your eyes and imagined sort of what's the best case scenario for a project like this, what you're seeing play out is pretty damn close to what the best case scenario was.
Sure is. Mary?
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit, Tim. I would love to take a deeper dive. The entrepreneurial ness, if you will, having the startups that are coming in. Chris has talked about those startups and how they're actually going to be partnering with the larger companies and acting almost as if they're coaches and mentors, the larger companies to the smaller startups. Can you talk a little bit about the role of those startups and what your vision is and how they're going to be supporting the larger companies that are at the Helix?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look all around the country and all around New Jersey as well, in the most successful and vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystems, what you see are really intentional partnerships and collaborations between, exactly as you said, big companies, small companies. When I say small, I mean one or two people, fiddling around with a molecule at a desk somewhere, venture capitalists, clinical researchers, all coming together in shared spaces where there's an opportunity for collaboration and innovation. That's how we're going to help, not just cure the diseases that confront us today, which is incredibly important and frankly, first and foremost when you're talking about life sciences, but also, create new companies that, will hopefully one day join the ranks of J&J and Merck and Bristol Myers and others that are, global titans that are based right here in New Jersey.
Yeah. And by the way, go on our website. The website, steveadubato.org, will come up. Tim recently did an interview with us where he talked extensively about New Jersey film industry innovation going on with Netflix, the partnership, Lionsgate, a whole bunch of stuff going on. Check that out. But I'm curious about something as it relates to innovation, innovative ideas that come out of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. So because we're doing this on lessons in leadership, I'm fascinated by people's leadership style, approach to things. To what extent, Tim, are you, and I know it's not a quantitative thing, 60%, 30%, whatever it is, how much are you driving these ideas? How much are your team members driving the ideas as leaders who happen not just to be the CEO? Make any sense?
100%. I help out where I can. The big ideas tend to come from a few places. In the case of the Helix, Chris Palladino and his team been working on that one for, years before Governor Murphy became governor. It didn't take long for the governor to hear about it to say, that's a big gosh darn idea. Tim and team, dig in. Let's make sure we're being as helpful as we can. But yeah, certainly my colleagues, and I don't want to start naming names, but I'm blessed to have a great group of colleagues and teammates who are out in the marketplace constantly and hearing about lots of ideas. We get told about lots of projects that could be, and part of our job, and it's really my colleagues' job, and they do great work, is to sift out, well, yeah, that's an interesting idea, but I'm not sure that's got the wherewithal to make it, as compared to something like the Helix, which had all the right ingredients and all the resources you would need to really bring something together to create a project of this size and scope.
Quick follow-up on that. To what degree do you believe, and Mary and I talk about this a lot in our leadership coaching for a whole range of organizations, we'll talk about creating a culture that promotes leadership, a culture of coaching and mentoring. To what degree have you as a leader worked to create such a culture?
Well, I think that's something that is incredibly important. I think particularly when you're doing economic development in a state like New Jersey, that is an innovation economy, that innovation involves risks and failures. And it's inherent to what we do. So we've got to try a lot of things, be careful and prudent and cautious when we're investing public money. It's not our money, but be careful and thoughtful, but also be willing to take some risks. I think you got to give the governor a ton of credit from the very earliest days of his administration. He's given me, as an individual member of his team, and lots of us across the Murphy administration, the backing and the confidence to say, go work on some big ideas. Some of them won't work out, but bring me big ones that, might have a chance to be game changers. And, the Helix is a great example of that. And there's, dozens across the administration that would fall into that category as well.
Mary, as you jump back in, got a minute left with Tim. It's the quote that we used. We have these leadership quotes we use all the time, Tim, and one of them comes from Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. As if, yeah, it didn't work out. I guess we failed. No, not really. If you learn something, well, anyway, you get the idea. Mary, go ahead.
That's a perfect segue, Steve. As Tim was talking, I was really thinking about confidence, and especially living in New Jersey, we've got competition on both sides. We've got Philadelphia, we've got New York City. Talk a little bit about where that confidence comes in New Jersey, in this region, to take such a huge leap, not only with the HELIX, but with other projects, with bringing film and media projects here to New Jersey. Where does your confidence come and your belief in this state come from?
It comes from the facts and the fundamentals. We're a big league state. We are small in geography, but we're the 11th biggest population state. We're the 9th biggest economy. Our economy is as big as many European countries from a GDP perspective. So, we swing a pretty big bat as an economy. And so we, have the capacity and the ambitions to, play at the highest level. So whether it's film and TV, as you said, offshore wind, life sciences, first or second place or bust. We're not interested in being in 9th place in a lot of things. It's not who New Jersey is. And that's how we play.
Tim Sullivan is the CEO of New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Check out our website, both the Stand Deliver website and steveadubato.org for a whole series of conversations we've had with Tim, and none of them are ever the same. And they're all compelling and important. Hey, Tim, cannot thank you enough for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Steve, Mary, great to be with you both. Thanks so much for having me on.
You guys stay with us. We'll be right back. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, the HELIX, Fedway Associates, Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Veolia, Resourcing the World, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.
At the Coriell Institute for Medical Research, we choose New Jersey because it's a great place to work and it's a great place to live. We work on understanding disease, but also curing diseases through drug development and clinical trials. This is such a central state and it's such a rich state in resources for medical research that it allows us to do the research that we need to do. This is New Jersey. It all happens here.
We are honored to be joined by Sister Maureen Shaughnessy, who is General Superior Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth. Sister Maureen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell everyone what the Sisters of Charity is all about, why they are so important. And I just told you that in my grammar school, St. Peter's Grammar School in Belleville, it was in fact the Sisters of Charity that made that school as wonderful as it was for so many of us who attended that great Catholic school. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. As I was thinking about this time, and as we look forward to celebrating our 165th anniversary as a congregation beginning in September, I went back to our rule, which is called Toward Boundless Charity. And I just want to make a connection between 1859 and 2024. So in our rule, we say that we look forward to a future filled with gifts and challenges from the Spirit, who calls us to an ever closer identification with Christ in his mission. And then we quote from the original rule from 1859. And the rule says, the principal end for which God has called and assembled the Sisters of Charity is to honor Jesus Christ our Lord, the source and model of all charity, by rendering him every temporal and spiritual service in their power, in the persons of the poor, either sick, prisoners, insane, or those who through shame would conceal their necessities. I think that's a very interesting backdrop for thinking about the Sisters of Charity today. We continue to do that. Our principal end is to share, to show God's love to all in the world. And we do that through the works, which were the works of our beginnings, of education, healthcare, social service, and pastoral ministries. And we've done that for 165 years, not only in New Jersey, but in 16 other states, in China, Bolivia, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and still now today in Haiti and El Salvador. So for those many years, these works have continued. Have they all stayed the same? No, we're no longer in a number of places, but the works continue.
You know, Sister, our mutual friend, Larry Downs,
Right.
Who recommended that we have you, and we're glad to do that. Larry and I have had we have a long-time friendship, had a business partnership in the past. Before he retired, he was a great CEO for many, many years, and a real student of leadership, but also a student of servant leadership. And it's my way of asking you this. When did you know, Sister, that serving others as a leader would be your life?
Well, I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be a sister, that I wanted to do what I saw sisters doing and who did it in such a joyful way. The sisters that I met as a young child were happy women, and they were giving women, and that attracted me. So I think when I think about leadership, there's all kinds of descriptions. But Vincent de Paul, who's one of our founders, told the Daughters of Charity back in the 17th century that their leaders were to be sisters' servants. So long before Robert Greenfield spoke about servant leadership, really Jesus Christ taught us that, because he was the servant for all. So I think that servant leadership calls us to put serving others above all other priorities, and to have a concern for the good of the community, for the good of all. So it's not just about individualism, it's about a common good.
Yeah.
And I think that's the tradition in religious congregations throughout the world, not just in the United States. We care for all people, but especially for those who are disadvantaged and are poor.
Mary, please.
So inspirational, Sister, and thank you for sharing all those stories. And I would love to talk a little bit about partnerships and collaboration. You touched on one of those partnerships with Trinitas. Talk about why these partnerships are so important. I know you also have a partnership with St. Joseph's Health, St. Vincent Academy. Why are partnerships, collaboration so important in continuing your mission, especially after 165 years?
Let me make a distinction for you, because we sponsor some ministries, which means we have a governance role with those ministries. So we have a role in our sponsored ministries, which is a governance one. And so that would be Trinitas to a degree, because it's now part of Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health, St. Joseph's, the Bon Secours Charity Health System in New York, which has 3 hospitals connected to it. And we are the canonical sponsor for Good Samaritan. St. Vincent Academy, the Academy of St. Elizabeth University, and Josephine's Place. So all of those are very directly connected to us. And we have a responsibility for them, which is exercised through our governance role. So we have people on their boards, and we have sisters serving in still some of those places. We have partnerships with others. And partnerships, I think, and networking are the way of the future, because we've all learned that we can do things together better than we can do them alone. So we build on one another's strength, and we support one another's limits. And I think that's a really important thing to hold on to. And in every part of the world that I know, in business and in industry and in social work and all of that, partnerships are growing.
Yeah.
We certainly saw that in healthcare,
Absolutely.
And I think we now see coalitions of universities and other places that are coming together. Certainly businesses through mergers, whether they're always good or not, are relationships like that, right? And so I think there's a realization that we are connected, and that connectivity is how we're going to go into the future and be able to do the best that we can do.
Sister, let me just say this to you, and I have this conversation again with Larry, because Larry went to Bergen Catholic, I went to Essex Catholic,
Okay.
and then later on went to Iona up in, and so.
So did you
the
have
Irish
Sister
Christian-
Peggy O'Neill?
I can't believe you just said that. It's a very small world. The Irish Christian Brothers were a big part of my life as well. But to you and to all of the sisters at the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth, just for so many of us whose lives were impacted in a positive way, and we were directed in a positive way, things could have turned out very different for a lot of us, particularly some of us who grew up in challenging urban communities where I did, like Newark, where I grew up. So I just want to say thank you, sister.
You're very welcome. We're privileged to serve. We're privileged to serve.
Well said. Sister Maureen Shaughnessy is General Superior Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth. Thank you, sister. Mary and I will be right back after this.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.
At Mush Foods, we choose New Jersey because it's the heart of the Northeast. And we knew that if we can succeed here, we can succeed everywhere. It's hard to have this kind of manufacturing employees and also high educated employees in the same place. And here you have it. Then you have also the colleges that specifically focus on food science, so you have both of them. And that's the magic. This is New Jersey. You can do anything here.
Welcome back to Lessons in Leadership. Steve and Mary have a few minutes just to chat, cover some bases. Hey, Mary, I want to mention a couple of books that may not be called leadership books, but they are, in fact, about leadership. I mentioned one of these before. Mary, thank you for ordering this book for me. George Stephanopoulos over at ABC News. He does what's the morning show? Good Morning America.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote this interesting book called The Situation Room. There's a room in the White House, Situation Room.
Yep.
Wolf Blitzer at CNN did not come up with that name. There was a Situation Room.
Good to know.
Inside story of presidents in crisis. This Situation Room was created for presidents and their top advisors to deal with incredibly difficult leadership crises in a fashion that was secure, that they could get information into and out of at very critical times. And that included 9/11. It included when President Reagan was shot in 1981. It included January 6th. It included, Mary, do you have an idea when it started, the first president to create an official, take a guess, because I talk about this in a lot of seminars. It's a president in the 60s.
Was it that Bay
Yes.
of Pigs thing that you talk about? I've learned.
Did you just say that Bay of Pigs thing you talked?
Bill Gamba, my husband, would be proud. He's like, don't even act like you know anything about history, because you don't, you know less than anything. But I got it right.
No, Mary, you're like a lot of people who are living their life, and people like me bring up stuff like this, and it's important. I'll put it in context. So before 1963, Two, there was no situation room. So I'm not going to go into the whole Bay of Pigs thing, but research it, and I wrote about it in a couple of books. Kennedy's president, he gets the advice from the CIA and others. We're going into Cuba, or the CIA is going to Cuba with these Cuban folks who were against Fidel Castro, the president there and dictator who we were at war with on a lot of levels. We could take Castro out. We're going to enter into Cuba, and we're going to surprise Castro and his army. And, oh, wait a minute, they're waiting for us in the mountains, in the fields. And so they come in and they capture all of them. And it's embarrassment, and some are killed. And so Kennedy not only takes full responsibility for it, but he says, you know what? We had no way to get together and figure this out. It was all scrambled and bifurcated and fragmented. So they created the Situation Room. Mary, we've had crises, nothing like the Bay of Pigs, which was then followed by the Cuban Missile Crisis right after that for Kennedy. And not to mention, when Kennedy was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963, it was the Situation Room that he helped create, that his brother Robert Kennedy and others were in to deal with the horrific assassination of a president and the transition into Lyndon Johnson becoming a new president on the plane that was taking President Kennedy's body back in a coffin together with the First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy, who was with the president when he was assassinated. They had that Situation Room that he created, Kennedy. By the way, any of that make any sense to you, Mary?
I'm following along, yes, which is good. That means that you explained it well.
Well, let me ask you this. Whether you call it a Situation Room or not, here's the reason I'm getting into this whole thing. How important is it to you that every organization has to have a room, metaphorical, actual, whatever, where they can get together and figure out really, really difficult stuff?
It's super important. That's why
Even if you're remote.
Yeah, even remote is fine. That's why nonprofits have boards of, you have a board of trustees, for-profits, say if you've got a chief of staff, you bring everybody together, but you need the best thinking. It can't just be one leader at the helm making decisions, because sometimes you get that tunnel vision and the decision you may make may not be the best judgment. So you want to make sure that you have a sounding board, that you have people that are not afraid to say, hey, wait a minute, Steve, that may not be the best way to go. At least consider this. And sure, as the CEO of the company, you are going to have the final say, but at least you want to have a place, a Situation Room, if you will, where those voices can be heard.
So it isn't really about having a room. The Situation Room to me is just understanding, and we actually are not going to go into it because we only have 30 seconds left. We had a programming issue that was important, significant, controversial, and challenging. I had no idea by myself how to handle it by myself. And if it were not for a great team coming together and talking it through, we would never have been able to deal with it. And so to me, bottom line is this: leaders who think they have all the answers, they're dangerous. Leaders who bring people together to come to either a consensus or the best possible decisions, that's leadership. For Steve Adubato, more importantly, for Mary Gamba and our team, thanks for watching. It's been Lessons in Leadership. We'll see you next time. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, the HELIX, Fedway Associates Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Veolia, Resourcing the World, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.